Hello everyone and welcome! Dark times arrive as we learn a little bit more about the powers of creation. Today we will have a look at Ryze and the task he has to deal with. Hope you enjoy it. It all started when Ryze was just a young man. While on a diplomatic mission, he overheard his master Tyrus in a discussion with another wise mage. He heard them arguing about the potential danger of something called world runes. As Tyrus noticed Ryze listening, he quickly ended the conversation while tightly clutching a scroll that never left his side. Over the following decades, knowledge of the runes began to spread as people found more of them around Runeterra. World's biggest minds started studying these glyphs, trying to understand their meaning. No one could figure out their origins, but some speculated that these runes were used to create this world. The first time someone was able to use those runes was catastrophic. Their magic destroyed and reshaped the landscape of entire nations. And with that, mistrust quickly grew as those who knew about these runes realized that they could be used as weapons. Ryze and Tyrus traveled between various nations trying to quell paranoia, but their task became more difficult with each new rune found, and Ryze began to sense his master's growing desperation. It all changed when Ryze and Tyrus were trying to calm down two armies near Ryze's home village called Com. Each side accused the other of plotting to use the runes against each other, and each was prepared to do so in self-defense. With things quickly getting out of hand, Tyrus decided to flee together with Ryze before the war unleashes the destruction. They had escaped halfway across a mountain before the battle erupted. Ryze suddenly felt the earth fall away beneath him. Both the ground and the sky morphed as if mortally wounded. Tyrus grabbed Ryze and screamed unheard commands. Seconds later, reality around them settled as they were transported to a mountain above the two armies. For the first time, they were witnessing the effects of two world runes at war. Below, they saw insanity. Destruction so massive that it defied all physical sense. The armies, the people, the land itself were gone. An ocean that was previously a day of traveling away was now rushing in. Ryze fell to his knees as he stared into a great hole left in the world. Little did he know that the upcoming times would be known as the Rune Wars. Wars now raged across Runeterra. Each use of the runes sparked more fear and aggression among those who could use their powers. Even Ryze felt the urge to join the conflicts to prevent further devastation. But Tyrus was there to stay his hand and to prevent him from going onto the path of vengeance. As they traveled around the world, Tyrus begged the users of the runes for sanity. He asked for every world rune to be locked away beyond the reach of man. Some understood the weight of those runes, and they gave them to Tyrus. Others refused to cast aside a newfound power and influence. Tyrus continued his work, attempting to remove all world runes from the reach of humanity. Yet, as hope for Runeterra grew, Tyrus seemed to change. Ryze felt his master growing more distant. Tyrus began to send him on less important missions while he himself was collecting the runes. One day, while being on one of those missions, Ryze heard the word of a new Cataclysm unleashed in Icathia. He rushed to the scene of devastation, concerned for his master and a friend. Upon his arrival, Ryze was glad to see Tyrus still alive and safe, but his relief was quickly swept away. Next to the scroll he had never been allowed to read sat two world runes. Tyrus explained that once the world runes were in play, he had no choice but to use them himself. Ryze was horrified as he realized Tyrus had not just survived the disaster, he had caused it. Tyrus continued to angrily justify his actions, saying how humanity is playing with powers they don't understand. He didn't want to be a diplomat for power-hungry mongrels anymore. Instead, he wanted to stop them. Though Ryze tried to reason with Tyrus, it was no use. The infinitely wise paragon he had looked up to since childhood was gone. The runes had corrupted him deeply, and he was sure to use them again and again, taking more of the world away each time. Ryze had to act, even if it meant destroying his only true friend. He unleashed every ounce of arcane energy he could muster. Tyrus reached for the runes, determined not to waste their power. But while he was grasping for them, he left himself defenseless, which led to his own doom. A moment later, Tyrus's corpse met the floor. Ryze trembled with emotion, as his own mind struggled to process what he had done. As he regained his senses, he found himself alone with the world runes. They glue, inviting him to possess them. Steeling himself, he picked them up one by one and immediately felt them transforming him into something greater or more terrible than he could ever be otherwise. He quickly dropped them and backed away. If these glyphs could corrupt a mage with the strength and integrity of Tyrus, how was Ryze to handle them? He then realized that if he walked away, someone else would find the runes and use them. At that moment, Ryze understood the scale of his task. Unsure what to do, Ryze saw the scroll Tyrus always carried with him. He slowly opened it and was illuminated by a radiant glow. Suddenly, Ryze knew what he must do. Ever since that day, Ryze has wandered the world. He constantly rejects the promise of power within each rune, choosing instead to bind them in secret locations no one can access. The powers he absorbed on his journey prolonged his life, allowing him to work on his quest for centuries. Now, the world runes have begun to emerge once more, and the world has forgotten the price of wielding them. One of his recent journeys brought Ryze to the harsh lands of Freljord. He heard the howling of hungry ice trolls nearby as he approached the gates of a village. Warriors covered in furs rushed to inspect him. "I've come to see Yago," said Ryze, pulling back the hood of his cloak just enough to reveal his violet skin. "It's urgent." The faces of the warriors atop the fence flashed with surprise at the sight of the rune mage. This was not a place with many visitors, since most of them ended up on pikes as a warning to others. Ryze, however, had a reputation that granted him access to most hostile territories of Runeterra. As he walked across toward the main temple, a small boy bravely left his grandmother's side for a closer look. "Are you a warlock?" asked the boy. "Something like that," replied Ryze without looking at the boy as he continued his march. He was always a wise man, maybe he'll cooperate, thought Ryze as he entered the temple, steeling himself for whatever was waiting for him. Inside, an old frost mage was pouring wine into a dish on an altar. He turned to see Ryze approaching and seemed to judge him silently. After a moment, the man smiled and embraced Ryze like a long-lost brother. "You look thin," said the mage. "You should eat something." "You shouldn't," replied Ryze, nodding to Yago's slightly sagging pouch. The two friends laughed long and easy, as if they had never been apart. Ryze slowly felt his guard begin to drop. He and Yago spent hours talking about their past adventures, until the heavy question dropped. "What brings you so deep into Freljord?" asked Yago at last. The question brought Ryze back to reality. He quickly recalled the words he had carefully prepared for this moment. He told a story of his days in Shurima. He had gone to investigate a tribe of nomads that had gained wealth and land of size of a small kingdom almost overnight. On closer inspection, Ryze found a world rune in their possession. Ryze lowered his voice before continuing the story. They resisted, and he had to do awful things to keep the world intact. Sometimes those awful things are better than the horrible cataclysm that would otherwise unfold. They must be kept safe, said Ryze, finally coming to his point. All of them. Yago nodded grimly, and the warmth that had been kindled between the two friends instantly evaporated. You would take it from us knowing it is all that keeps the trolls away? Asked Yago. You knew this would come, said Ryze, offering no solution. You've known for years. Give us more time. In the spring we will head south. What chance do we have in winter? You've said those words before, Ryze said coldly. To his surprise, Yago took him by the hands, making a gentle plea. There are many children among us, and 3 of our women are swollen with child. You would doom us all? Asked Yago desperately. How many are in this village? Asked Ryze. 92, replied Yago. And how many are in the world? Yago fell silent. It can no longer wait. Dark forces gather to take it. It will leave with me today, Ryze demanded. You would use it for yourself, accused Yago, erupting in jealous rage. Ryze looked into Yago's face to see that he was no longer himself. Ryze started to explain that he had learned long ago not to use the runes, that doing so would always come with too high a price, but Yago didn't listen. A quick hit made Ryze fall on the floor. When he looked up, he saw Yago in a casting stance, his fingers crackling with power that no mortal being should possess. Coming to his senses, Ryze rooted the Frost Mage in a place with a ring of arcane power, giving himself just enough time to get on his feet. Ryze and Yago circled each other, clashing with powers the world had not seen in ages. After what seemed like hours, the combined powers of their attacks breached the walls of the temple and brought the thick ice dome crumbling down upon them. Badly wounded, Ryze was able to get back on his knees. He saw a blurred image of Yago trying to open a strange lockbox. Ryze could tell what was inside by the lust in Yago's eyes. With his magic energy drained, Ryze leapt on the back of his old friend and started strangling him with the belt of his robe. He felt nothing. The man who he had loved deeply just minutes ago was now merely a task in need of completion. Yago struggled mightily, his legs flailing, searching for a foothold. Then he fell dead. Ryze pulled a key from Yago's necklace and opened the box. He then removed the world rune inside. As he walked outside the temple, he was expecting warriors of the village attacking him, but none of them did. The whole village stared at him, knowing that they are looking at their own end. What are we to do? Asked the grandmother with the young boy still clutching her furs. I'd leave, said Ryze. Can't we come with you? Called the young boy. Ryze paused. Part of him wanted to scream, take them, protect them and forget about the rest of the world, but he knew he couldn't. He left without looking back, for those were the faces of the dead, and his business was with those who still could be saved. And that is where the story of Ryze ends right now. This story brings up so many cool theories, and I might actually start working on one of them right now. But until then, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to click the like button. I guess I still owe you the picture of my instant coffee from the likes on my last video. If you have any feedback at all, leave it down below in the comment section. Follow me on my social media for more updates on my Pokemon Go addiction. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, thank you, come again. So about the theories that I came up with during reading this lore, I don't want to spoil them, but I got a pretty good theory on what is actually written on the scroll, because the story doesn't actually tell us what's there. And the other theory that I have is what actually happens when you use the runes. I think I have a pretty good theory about that too. And also we don't really know why he's blue, even though the story says that as he is collecting the runes, he is absorbing the powers. I guess it's some kind of radioactivity or something similar to that. But because of that, he is pretty much immortal age-wise. I think you can still shoot him and he dies, but I don't think he can die of age. But more about that in the next video, so see you until then.